On a small asteroid mining station far from Earth, life was quiet and predictable. The workers spent their days fixing machines, digging for minerals, and trying to stay sane in the endless emptiness of space. Among them was Daniel Carter, an EO, engineer who had been on the station for 3 years. He didn't talk much, preferring to focus on his work. It wasn't that he didn't like people. It was just easier to keep his head down and avoid trouble. One day, while inspecting a damaged part of the station's outer hull, Daniel noticed something strange. Half buried in debris was a small escape pod, its surface dented and scorched as if it had survived some kind of explosion. The pod looked old, its design unfamiliar but clearly not made by humans. Curious, Daniel signaled the others, and soon, a team of workers gathered around the mysterious object. Inside the pod, they found a man. He was thin, with messy hair and clothes that were torn and dirty. His face was pale, and his eyes stared ahead blankly, as though he couldn't see anything. At first, everyone thought he was dead, but then someone noticed the faint rise and fall of his chest. He was alive, but barely. The man was brought inside the station and laid on a medical bed. Lisa Harper, the station's medic, examined him carefully. She checked his pulse, temperature, and breathing, but everything seemed normal. There were no visible injuries, no signs of illness or malnutrition, yet the man didn't respond to anything. He didn't move when touched, didn't react to loud noises, and didn't even blink when a light was shown in his eyes. It was as if his body was there, but his mind had gone somewhere else entirely. Lisa tried talking to him, asking simple questions like, "Can you hear me?" or "What's your name?" But the man didn't answer. His lips didn't move, and his expression remained blank. Frustrated, Lisa turned to Daniel, who was watching silently from the corner of the room. "Do you think he's faking it?" she asked. Daniel shook his head. "No way. Look at him. He's not pretending. Something's wrong." Word spread quickly through the station about the mysterious man in the escape pod. People came to see him, whispering among themselves and speculating about where he had come from. Some thought he might be a spy, sent by a rival corporation to gather information. Others believed he was an alien disguised as a human, though no one could explain why an alien would bother. A few brave souls tried talking to him, hoping to get some kind of response. One worker, named Jake, leaned close and shouted into the man's ear, "Hey, wake up!" But the man didn't flinch. Another worker, Mary, gently took his hand and said, "It's okay. You're safe now." Still, there was no reaction. But then something strange started happening. The people who tried to communicate with the man began acting oddly afterward. Jake, who had shouted into the man's ear, suddenly froze mid-sentence during dinner later that night. His fork clattered to the floor as he stared straight ahead, his face pale and his eyes wide with terror. When someone asked him what was wrong, he mumbled something about voices before running out of the room. Mary was next. After holding the man's hand, she became withdrawn and distant. She stopped speaking to her co-workers and spent hours staring at the wall of her quarters. When Lisa finally confronted her, Mary whispered, "I can hear them. They won't stop talking." By this point, fear had started to spread through the station. No one wanted to go near the man anymore, and rumors flew about what he might be. Was he cursed, possessed, or worse? Was he carrying some kind of alien disease that drove people insane? Captain Ryan Mitchell arrived a week later aboard the research vessel, Aurora Dawn. A tall, stern man with sharp features and a no-nonsense attitude, Mitchell wasted no time taking control of the situation. He ordered the man, now identified as Ethan Blake based on faded documents found in the escape pod, to be moved to a secure holding cell. Then he called a meeting with the station's leaders. "We need to figure out what's going on here," Mitchell said, pacing back and forth in the cramped conference room. "This isn't just some random drifter. Whatever happened to him and to the people who've interacted with him is serious. If we don't handle this carefully, it could jeopardize the entire mission." Daniel spoke up. "Sir, I don't think Ethan is dangerous. He hasn't done anything. It's whatever's affecting the people who try to talk to him. That's the problem." Mitchell nodded. Agreed. Which is why we're bringing him back to Central Command for further study. In the meantime, I want everyone to stay away from him. Understood? The crew nodded, but their faces betrayed their unease. Even Mitchell seemed troubled, though he tried to hide it. As the meeting ended, Lisa approached him privately. "Captain," she said quietly, "there's something you should know. Before you arrived, more people reported hearing voices. Not just the ones who talked to Ethan. They say they hear them too, even from across the station." Mitchell frowned. "Voices?" "Yes, sir, they describe them as whispers, like someone is speaking just out of earshot. But when they turn to look, there's no one there." For a moment, Mitchell said nothing. Then he sighed and rubbed his temples. "Keep an eye on it, Harper, and make sure no one gets too close to Ethan. We'll sort this out once we're back at command." As the days passed, the tension aboard the station grew thicker. Strange things kept happening. Lights flickered without explanation. Equipment malfunctioned for no apparent reason. And the whispers continued, growing louder and more frequent. Some crew members swore they saw shadows moving in the corners of their vision, though no one could ever catch them when they turned to look. Despite Mitchell's orders, curiosity got the better of a few people. Late one night, 2 technicians snuck into the holding area where Ethan was being kept. They didn't plan to talk to him. They just wanted to see him up close. But as they stood outside his cell peering through the glass, they both froze. Their faces went slack and their eyes widened in horror. Within seconds, they collapsed to the floor, shaking violently and muttering incoherently. When guards arrived to drag the technicians away, they found Ethan sitting upright in his cell, staring directly at them. For the first time since his discovery, his lips moved. Though no sound came out, the guards felt a chill run down their spines. Whatever Ethan was, it was clear he wasn't just a helpless captive. He was something far stranger and far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. Back at Central Command, Ethan Blake became the center of attention. Scientists, doctors, and military personnel gathered to study him, each hoping to uncover the mystery behind his silence and the strange effects he had on those around him. Captain Ryan Mitchell oversaw the operation, ensuring strict protocols were followed. No one was allowed near Ethan without permission, and all interactions were closely monitored. Despite these precautions, unease hung heavy in the air. Dr. Emily Dawson, a xenopsychologist known for her work with alien species, took charge of the project. She had spent years studying how different life forms communicated and processed information. To her, Ethan represented both a challenge and an opportunity, chance to understand something truly extraordinary. But she also knew the risks. The reports from the asteroid station were troubling, and she couldn't ignore the growing number of incidents involving people who had come into contact with Ethan. The first step was to gather more data. Dr. Dawson reviewed the medical scans taken aboard the Aurora Dawn and compared them to new tests conducted at Central Command. Physically, Ethan appeared completely normal. His heart rate, brain activity, and reflexes showed no abnormalities, yet something about him defied explanation. His eyes, though open, seemed vacant, as if his mind had disconnected from the world around him. And then there were the whispers, the voices that only those near him claimed to hear. To test the phenomenon, Dr. Dawson decided to recruit volunteers willing to interact with Ethan under controlled conditions. She made sure they understood the risks, explaining that previous attempts had led to unpredictable results. Still, several crew members stepped forward, eager to help, or perhaps too curious to resist. The first volunteer was Kevin Foster, a young security officer with a reputation for bravery. Kevin didn't hesitate when asked to enter the soundproof room where Ethan was being held. He sat down across from Ethan, staring at the silent figure sitting motionless on the other side of the table. For a few minutes, nothing happened. Kevin leaned forward slightly, trying to catch any sign of movement or awareness. Then suddenly, his expression changed. At first, Kevin smiled, almost amused by the situation. But the smile quickly faded, replaced by confusion. He tilted his head, listening intently to something only he could hear. His lips parted as if to speak, but no words came out. Instead, he began laughing, a sharp, unnatural laugh that echoed through the observation room outside. Dr. Dawson watched, anxiously from behind the glass, her fingers gripping the edge of the desk. "Kevin," she said into the microphone, "can you tell us what you're hearing?" Kevin's laughter stopped abruptly. His face twisted in terror as he clutched, his head shaking violently. No, stop," he screamed, his voice rising to a fever pitch. "Get them out of my head." Guards rushed into the room, pulling Kevin away from Ethan. By the time they dragged him out, he was muttering incoherently, tears streaming down his face. He never recovered. Days later, Kevin remained catatonic, unable to respond to anyone or anything. The second volunteer was Laura Bennett, a communications specialist. Like Kevin, she entered the room confident and calm. At first, she spoke softly, asking Ethan questions about who he was and where he came from. When he didn't answer, she tried humming a tune, hoping to provoke some kind of reaction. Nothing happened for nearly 10 minutes. Then, Laura froze. Her hands trembled as she covered her ears, her breathing becoming rapid and shallow. "They're here," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the intercom. "I can see them. They're everywhere." "What do you see, Laura?" "Doctor," Dawson asked urgently. "Describe it." Laura shook her head, her body convulsing. "Shapes, moving, inside me," she stammered before collapsing onto the floor. When the guards retrieved her, she was unconscious, her skin cold and clammy. Each interaction followed the same pattern. Volunteers would start off fine, but within minutes, they would break down, overwhelmed by visions and sounds no one else could perceive. Some raved about shadowy figures crawling along the walls. Others described geometric patterns shifting in the air, pulsating with colors beyond human comprehension. All of them ended up either catatonic or babbling nonsense, their minds seemingly shattered by whatever presence lingered around Ethan. As the experiments continued, fear spread among the staff. Even those not directly involved found themselves affected. Late at night, workers reported hearing faint murmurs echoing through the corridors. Doors slammed shut without explanation. Lights flickered erratically, casting eerie shadows across the walls. Rumors circulated about Ethan being possessed by an alien entity, or worse, that he himself was some kind of alien hybrid, designed to drive humans insane. Captain Mitchell grew increasingly frustrated. "We're getting nowhere," he snapped, during a meeting with Dr. Dawson and her team. "Every day this thing spreads further. How long until we lose control entirely?" Dr. Dawson sighed, rubbing her temples. "I know, sir, but we have to keep trying. There's a pattern here, something we're missing. These voices, these hallucinations, they're not random. They're tied to Ethan somehow. If we can decode what's happening, we might be able to neutralize the threat." Despite her determination, even Dr. Dawson wasn't immune to the growing paranoia. She started having vivid dreams filled with swirling shapes and indistinct voices whispering in languages she didn't recognize. During waking hours, she caught herself glancing over her shoulder, convinced someone, or something, was watching her. It was as if Ethan's influence was seeping into her mind, planting seeds of doubt and fear. One evening, after another failed experiment, Dr. Dawson stayed late in her office, poring over notes and recordings. She replayed footage of the sessions, analyzing every detail. That's when she noticed something strange. In the moments before volunteers broke down, subtle changes occurred in their behavior. Their pupils dilated slightly, their breathing slowed, and most notably their heads tilted ever so slightly as if listening to something just out of range. Curious, Dr. Dawson enhanced the audio tracks from the recordings. Beneath the ambient noise, she detected faint vibrations, low-frequency hums that matched the rhythm of Ethan's own brainwaves. Could these frequencies be the source of the problem? Was Ethan emitting some kind of signal that disrupted human cognition? Determined to find answers, Dr. Dawson devised a new plan. Using harmonic resonance generators, she hoped to amplify Ethan's mental emissions without exposing anyone directly. If successful, she could isolate the signal and analyze its structure, potentially deciphering its meaning. But such an experiment carried significant risk. Amplifying the signal might intensify its effects, putting everyone in greater danger. When she presented her idea to Captain Mitchell, he hesitated. "Are you sure about this, Doctor? If something goes wrong..." "We don't have a choice," Dr. Dawson interrupted firmly. "If we don't act now, whatever's happening will only get worse. We need to understand what we're dealing with." Reluctantly, Mitchell agreed. Preparations began immediately, with technicians setting up equipment in a reinforced containment chamber. Meanwhile, Dr. Dawson recruited Sarah Bennett, a linguist specializing in decoding complex patterns, to assist with the analysis. Together, they prepared for what might be their last chance to unravel the mystery of Ethan Blake and the terrifying force he carried within him. The day of the experiment arrived, and tension filled the air at Central Command. Dr. Emily Dawson stood in the observation room overlooking the reinforced containment chamber where Ethan Blake sat motionless. The equipment hummed softly as technicians made final adjustments to the harmonic resonance generators. These machines were designed to amplify brainwave patterns, and today they would focus on Ethan's mysterious mental emissions. If everything went according to plan, the team might finally uncover the source of the whispers that had driven so many people to madness. Sarah Bennett joined Dr. Dawson in the observation room. A linguist with a sharp mind and steady hands, Sarah had spent years decoding ancient languages and alien communication systems. Though she was nervous about what they might discover, she knew this was an opportunity unlike any other. "Ready?" Dr. Dawson asked, her voice calm but tinged with urgency. "As ready as I'll ever be," Sarah replied, clutching a notebook tightly. With a nod from Captain Mitchell, the experiment began. Technicians activated the resonance generators, which emitted low-frequency pulses synchronized with Ethan's brain activity. At first, nothing seemed to happen. Ethan remained still, his blank stare fixed on the wall ahead. But then, the monitors, tracking his brainwaves, showed a sudden spike in activity. The frequencies grew louder, more complex, and began to spread outward, filling the chamber with an eerie vibration. In the observation room, Sarah leaned closer to the speakers connected to the chamber. Through them came faint sounds, whispers, clicks, and tones layered together in a chaotic symphony. It was overwhelming, like listening to dozens of overlapping conversations in languages no human could understand. She scribbled notes furiously, trying to capture patterns and rhythms within the noise. As the amplification increased, the whispers became clearer, or at least more distinct. They weren't random. They formed sequences, almost like sentences. Sarah's eyes widened as she realized what she was hearing wasn't just static. It was a message. "There's structure here," she said aloud, her voice trembling with excitement. "It's not just chaos. It's language." Dr. Dawson nodded, her expression intense. "Can you translate it?" "I'll try," Sarah replied, pulling up a digital interface on her tablet. She inputted fragments of the audio, running algorithms designed to detect mathematical patterns or linguistic rules. The process was slow and painstaking, but gradually, pieces of the puzzle started falling into place. Meanwhile, the effects of the amplified signal began spreading beyond the containment chamber. In the observation room, Dr. Dawson felt a strange pressure building in her head, like a dull ache behind her eyes. She rubbed her temples, trying to shake it off, but the sensation persisted. Beside her, Sarah winced, clutching her ears even, though the soundproof glass blocked most of the noise. "Do you feel that?" Sarah asked, her voice strained. "Yes," Dr. Wagner admitted. "But we can't stop now. Keep working." Sarah forced herself to focus, ignoring the growing discomfort. On her screen, the decoded fragments started forming coherent phrases. They were fragmented and disjointed, but they hinted at a larger meaning. One sequence translated roughly to "beyond sight," another read, "do not follow." And then, chillingly, "we watch." By now, the entire facility seemed affected. Outside the observation room, workers reported headaches and dizziness. Some claimed to see flickering shapes out of the corner of their vision, shadowy forms that vanished when looked at directly. Alarms blared as systems across the base malfunctioned, lights flickering erratically and doors opening and closing on their own. Panic spread quickly, but Captain Mitchell ordered everyone to remain calm and stay away from the containment area. Back in the observation room, Sarah's progress accelerated. She identified repeating motifs within the alien signals, mathematical equations embedded within layers of chaotic noise. These equations described concepts far beyond human understanding, referencing dimensions and forces humanity had never encountered. It was as if the Vorthak, the enigmatic alien race Dr. Dawson suspected was involved, communicated not through words, but through abstract ideas encoded in pure mathematics. Finally, Sarah isolated a complete phrase. Her hands trembled as she wrote it down. Do not seek us. We are watchers, guardians of truths you cannot bear. What does it mean? Dr. Dawson asked, leaning over Sarah's shoulder. It's a warning, Sarah said quietly. They're telling us to stay away, to leave them alone. Before they could discuss further, the situation escalated. The amplified signal reached a critical threshold, causing the equipment in the containment chamber to overload. Sparks flew as circuits fried, and the resonance generators emitted a deafening screech. In the observation room, both Sarah and Dr. Dawson collapsed to their knees, overwhelmed by the intensity of the transmission. Their minds flooded with images, geometric patterns shifting and twisting, vast landscapes of light and shadow stretching infinitely in all directions. Voices echoed in their heads, speaking in unison yet separately, each word resonating with unbearable clarity. Captain Mitchell burst into the room, shouting orders to shut down the experiment. Technicians scrambled to cut power to the generators, but the damage was done. When the noise finally ceased, the two women lay panting on the floor, their faces pale and sweat-drenched. For several minutes, neither could speak. When Sarah finally found her voice, it was hoarse and shaky. We have to stop, she whispered. If we keep going, it'll destroy us. Dr. Dawson nodded weakly, still reeling from the experience. You're right, this isn't something we're meant to understand, not yet anyway. Despite the setbacks, Sarah had managed to record enough data to piece together a partial translation of the alien message. It confirmed Dr. Dawson's theory. Ethan Blake had been exposed to the Vorthak, a highly advanced species capable of manipulating reality itself. Their communication method bypassed traditional senses, embedding thoughts directly into the minds of those who heard them. Unfortunately, the human brain wasn't equipped to handle such raw, unfiltered information. Those who listened too closely risked permanent damage, or worse. Captain Mitchell called an emergency meeting once the situation stabilized. He listened intently as Dr. Dawson explained the findings, his face grim. So, what you're saying is we can't study him without risking our own sanity, he summarized. Exactly, Dr. Dawson replied. Ethan's presence acts as a conduit for the Vorthak's messages. Every time someone interacts with him, they get a fragment of that knowledge, and it drives them insane. Mitchell sighed heavily. Then we need to decide what to do with him. Keeping him here is too dangerous. Some suggested jettisoning Ethan into deep space, effectively abandoning him to whatever fate awaited him. Others argued for destroying him outright, fearing the consequences if the Vorthak ever returned, for their messenger. But Dr. Dawson opposed both options. He's not just a threat, he's a key to understanding the Vorthak, she insisted. If we eliminate him, we lose any chance of learning more about them. After much debate, a compromise was reached. Ethan would be placed in a secure capsule, equipped with shielding designed to block his mental emissions. The capsule would then be released into orbit around a distant star, far from inhabited space. Perhaps, Dr. Dawson hoped, the Vorthak would retrieve their messenger, or perhaps Ethan would drift forever, a silent reminder of humanity's limitations. As preparations were made, Sarah reflected on the events of the past few days. She had glimpsed something extraordinary, something that challenged everything she thought she knew about the universe. Yet, she couldn't shake the feeling of unease. The Vorthak's warning echoed in her mind, a reminder that some truths were better left undiscovered. When the time came to load Ethan into the capsule, Sarah watched silently from the observation deck. His expression hadn't changed. He remained as vacant and unmoving as ever. As the capsule sealed shut and floated away into the void, she felt a pang of sadness, not for Ethan, but for the questions that would never be answered. Whatever secrets, the Vorthak guarded humanity wasn't ready to face them, not yet. The capsule containing Ethan Blake drifted silently through the vast emptiness of space, its trajectory carrying it toward a distant star. Back at Central Command, life slowly returned to normal, or as close to normal as it could be after the events of the past weeks. The whispers that had plagued the facility faded and the strange phenomena ceased. Equipment functioned properly again, lights stayed steady, and doors no longer opened on their own. Yet for many who had witnessed what happened, the memory lingered like a shadow they couldn't shake. Dr. Emily Dawson spent her days reviewing the data collected during the experiment. Though the amplification process had been shut down before, they could fully decode the alien signals. Sarah Bennett's partial translation provided valuable insights. The message from the Vorthak was clear. Humanity wasn't ready to understand their knowledge. It wasn't just a warning, it was a boundary, one that should not be crossed. Despite this, Dr. Dawson couldn't help but feel frustrated. She had dedicated her career to studying alien consciousness, seeking answers to questions most people didn't even think to ask. Now, she faced an impossible dilemma. The Vorthak represented an intelligence so far beyond human comprehension that attempting to communicate with them directly risked madness or worse, but ignoring their existence altogether felt like turning away from something profound, something that might hold the key to understanding the universe. Captain Ryan Mitchell shared none of Dr. Dawson's curiosity. To him, Ethan Blake was a threat, one that had nearly compromised the safety of his crew and the entire facility. He made it clear in debriefings that any further contact with the Vorthak was out of the question. "We've done our part," he told Dr. Dawson firmly. "Ethan is gone, and with him, the problem. Let's focus on what we can control." But not everyone agreed. Some scientists argued that abandoning Ethan was a mistake. They believed the Vorthak might return for their messenger, and when they did, humanity would need to be prepared. Others thought the capsule itself posed a danger, reasoning that if it ever fell into the wrong hands or was discovered by another species, it could unleash the same chaos elsewhere. Sarah Bennett, however, took a different view. After decoding fragments of the Vorthak's message, she became convinced that leaving Ethan alone was the only responsible choice. "They're watching us," she said during a meeting with Dr. Dawson and Captain Mitchell. "Not because they want to harm us, but because they're protecting us. If we push too hard, if we try to force our way into their world, we'll regret it." Her words carried weight, especially given her role in unraveling the alien communication. Still, doubts remained. What if the Vorthak weren't as benevolent as Sarah believed? What if their warnings were meant to keep humanity submissive, preventing them from advancing beyond their current level? These questions haunted Dr. Dawson, keeping her awake at night. As weeks turned into months, the incident began to fade from public awareness. Official reports classified Ethan Blake as a victim of unknown circumstances, and details about the Vorthak were buried under layers of secrecy. Life aboard Central Command resumed its usual rhythm, though subtle changes lingered. Workers avoided discussing what had happened, and some left their posts altogether, unable to endure the lingering sense of unease. One evening, Dr. Dawson sat alone in her office, staring at the glowing screen of her computer. On it were diagrams and notes from the experiment, along with Sarah's partial translation of the alien message. Her eyes scanned the words repeatedly. "Do not seek us. We are watchers, guardians of truths you cannot bear." She sighed, rubbing her temples. No matter how many times she read them, the words refused to offer comfort or closure. A knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. Looking up, she saw Captain Mitchell standing there, his expression unusually somber. "Can I come in?" he asked. "Of course," Dr. Dawson replied, gesturing to a chair across from her desk. Mitchell closed the door behind him and sat down. For a moment, neither spoke. Then he leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "I've been thinking," he began. "About Ethan, about everything." Dr. Dawson raised an eyebrow. "And?" "I don't like unanswered questions," Mitchell admitted. "This whole thing, it doesn't sit right with me. Sending him off into space feels incomplete. Like we're running away instead of facing the problem." Dr. Dawson nodded slowly. "I know what you mean. But what else can we do? Every time we tried to learn more, it put people at risk." "That's true," Mitchell conceded. "But maybe there's another way. A safer way." "What do you have in mind?" Dr. Dawson asked cautiously. Mitchell hesitated before speaking. "We could send a probe, equipped with sensors designed to detect the same frequencies Ethan emitted. If we find him—" "And then what?" Dr. Dawson interrupted. "Bring him back? Start the whole cycle over again?" "No," Mitchell said quickly. "Just observe. See if the Vorthak show up. Maybe they'll give us another chance to make contact. On their terms." The idea intrigued Dr. Dawson, but it also worried her. "It's risky," she said. "Even observing from a distance could provoke them. And if they see it as a violation—" "I know," Mitchell acknowledged. "But staying in the dark isn't much better. At least this way, we'd have some answers." After a long pause, Dr. Dawson finally nodded. "All right, let's propose it to command, but we'll need strict protocols in place. No direct interaction, no attempts to amplify signals, nothing that could escalate the situation." Agreeing on the plan, they worked together to draft a proposal outlining the mission parameters. The probe would be launched remotely, programmed, to avoid detection while gathering as much data as possible. Its primary objective was simple: locate Ethan's capsule and monitor any activity around it. If the Vorthak appeared, the probe would record everything without engaging. Months later, the probe was ready. Launched from a secure facility far from Central Command, it traveled silently through space, guided by automated systems. Days passed. Without incident, and hopes began to rise that the mission might succeed without attracting unwanted attention. Then, one day, the probe detected something unusual. Near the edge of a distant star system, it picked up faint traces of the same frequencies associated with Ethan's mental emissions. As it approached, the source became clearer, a small object drifting aimlessly against the backdrop of stars. It was Ethan's capsule, but the probe wasn't alone. Surrounding the capsule were shapes, vast, indistinct forms that seemed to shimmer and shift like liquid light. They moved with purpose, converging on the capsule as if drawn to it. Sensors registered bursts of energy emanating from the shapes, accompanied by waves of low-frequency vibrations. Back at Central Command, Dr. Dawson and Captain Mitchell watched the live feed in stunned silence. The shapes matched descriptions of the Vorthak recorded during previous encounters, though no one had ever seen them so clearly. Their presence confirmed what they had suspected all along. The Vorthak had been watching and waiting. As the probe continued recording, one of the shapes extended a tendril-like appendage toward the capsule. With a flash of light, the capsule vanished, leaving behind only empty space. Moments later, the shapes dispersed, disappearing as suddenly as they had appeared. For a long time, neither Dr. Dawson nor Captain Mitchell spoke. Finally, Mitchell broke the silence. "Well," he said quietly, "at least we know they got him." Dr. Dawson nodded, her gaze fixed on the now empty screen. "Yes, and we know they're still out there." Though the probe continued operating for several more weeks, it found no further trace of the Vorthak or Ethan's capsule. Eventually, it was recalled, its mission complete. The data it collected provided valuable insights into the Vorthak's behavior, confirming their role as guardians of advanced knowledge. In the end, the mystery of Ethan Blake remained unsolved, but not forgotten. His brief appearance in human history served as a reminder of the limits of understanding and the dangers of seeking answers beyond one's grasp. For Dr. Dawson, Captain Mitchell, and everyone else involved, The experience left an indelible mark, shaping their perspectives on the universe and humanity's place within it. And somewhere, in the infinite expanse of space, the Vorthak continued their silent vigil, ensuring that certain truths remained forever hidden from those who weren't ready to face them. Months passed after the probe's encounter with the Vorthak, and life at Central Command settled into a fragile sense of routine. The data collected during the mission was carefully analyzed, though much of it remained inconclusive. Scientists pored over the recordings of the shimmering shapes and the energy bursts they emitted, searching for patterns or clues about their nature. But no matter how hard they tried, the Vorthak's actions defied explanation. They were enigmatic, almost spectral, beings who operated on principles far removed from human understanding. Dr. Emily Dawson struggled to move on. Though she had agreed with Captain Mitchell that sending the probe was the right decision, she couldn't shake the feeling that humanity had missed an opportunity. The Vorthak's warning echoed in her mind. Do not seek us. It wasn't just a message. It was a boundary, one that felt both protective and restrictive. She often found herself wondering what would happen if humans chose to ignore it. Would the Vorthak retaliate, or were they truly watching over Earth, shielding it from forces too dangerous to comprehend? Captain Ryan Mitchell, on the other hand, seemed more at peace. For him, the disappearance of Ethan Blake's capsule marked the end of a troubling chapter. He believed the Vorthak had reclaimed their messenger, removing the threat he posed to humanity. To Mitchell, the universe was vast and full of mysteries better left alone. His focus shifted back to practical matters, ensuring the safety of his crew, maintaining the facility, and preparing for future missions unrelated to alien encounters. But not everyone shared his perspective. Some members of the team, particularly Sarah Bennett, remained haunted by the events. Sarah had spent countless hours decoding fragments of the Vorthak's message, piecing together glimpses of their language and intent. While others moved on, she continued to revisit the recordings, hoping to uncover something new. Late at night, when the facility was quiet, she sat in her office. Headphones pressed tightly against her ears as she listened to the faint whispers captured by the probe. One evening, as Sarah replayed a section of the audio, she noticed something she hadn't before. Buried beneath the chaotic layers of sound was a faint rhythm, a repeating sequence that didn't match any part of the earlier translations. Intrigued, she isolated the segment and ran it through a series of algorithms designed to detect hidden meanings. What emerged sent chills down her spine. The sequence translated to a single phrase: "We are waiting." Sarah stared at the screen, her heart pounding. Waiting? For what? And why? She immediately contacted Dr. Dawson, knowing this discovery could change everything. When Dr. Dawson arrived, Sarah played the audio for her, pointing out the newly decoded phrase. "It's not just a warning," Sarah said, her voice trembling. "They're anticipating something. Maybe our next move, or someone else's." Dr. Dawson frowned, leaning closer to the monitor. "This complicates things. If they're waiting, it means they expect interaction. But we don't know what kind or what the consequences might be." "What should we do?" Sarah asked. "For now, nothing," Dr. Dawson replied firmly. "We can't act without more information. Sharing this could cause panic, or worse, provoke someone into doing something reckless." Reluctantly, Sarah agreed to keep the discovery private, for the time being, but the weight of the knowledge pressed heavily on her. Every day she wondered if the Vorthak's patience had limits, and what might happen if those limits were tested. As weeks turned into months, strange occurrences began cropping up again at Central Command. Equipment malfunctioned without explanation. Workers reported hearing faint murmurs in empty hallways. Lights flickered sporadically, casting eerie shadows across walls. At first, these incidents seemed minor, easily dismissed as coincidences or stress-related phenomena. But as they grew more frequent, unease spread among the staff. Then came the dreams. Several people, including Dr. Dawson and Sarah, started experiencing vivid nightmares filled with swirling shapes and indistinct voices. In the dreams, the shapes loomed larger than ever, pulsating with light and energy. The voices whispered incessantly, speaking in languages no one recognized. When Sarah woke from one such dream, she realized the voices weren't random. They were repeating the same phrase. "We are waiting." Terrified, Sarah confided in Dr. Dawson, who admitted she'd been having similar dreams. Together, they decided to investigate further, reviewing the probe's data once more. This time they focused on the moments leading up to the Vorthak's departure. As they analyzed the footage frame by frame, they noticed something chilling. One of the shimmering shapes appeared to pause briefly before vanishing. During that moment, it emitted a low-frequency pulse, one that matched the rhythm of the phrase Sarah had decoded. "It's like they left a trace behind," Sarah whispered, her voice barely audible. "A reminder." Dr. Dawson nodded grimly. "Or a signal, something to let us know they're still watching." The implications were clear. The Vorthak hadn't simply abandoned humanity. They were monitoring it closely, waiting to see how humans would respond. The question was whether this observation was benign or a prelude to something far more sinister. Captain Mitchell learned of the findings reluctantly after Sarah and Dr. Dawson decided the situation warranted his attention. He listened silently as they explained their theory, his expression growing darker with each word. When they finished, he sighed deeply. "So, what you're saying is, we're not done with them. They're still here, in some way." "Yes," Dr. Dawson confirmed. "And until we understand why, we need to proceed cautiously." Mitchell nodded, though his frustration was evident. "Fine, but I want constant surveillance. If anything unusual happens, I want to know immediately." Despite the renewed vigilance, the facility remained tense. Workers avoided discussing the strange occurrences, fearing they might attract unwanted attention. Even simple tasks became nerve-wracking, as everyone wondered if the Vorthak were somehow influencing events from afar. One night, Sarah stayed late in her office, unable to sleep. She replayed the audio recordings endlessly, searching for answers. As she listened, the whispers grew louder, more insistent. Her vision blurred, and the room seemed to tilt slightly. Panicked, she tore off the headphones and stumbled to the window, gasping for air. Outside, the stars twinkled innocently, but Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that something was out there, watching, waiting. The next morning, she approached Dr. Dawson with a bold suggestion. "What if we send another message?" she asked. "Not to provoke them, but to show we're listening, that we respect their warning." Dr. Dawson hesitated, considering the risks. "It's dangerous," she admitted, "but it might also be necessary. If we ignore them completely, it could look like defiance." Together, they drafted a simple transmission using mathematical patterns based on the Vorthak's earlier messages. The content was neutral, expressing acknowledgement of their presence and humanity's willingness to coexist peacefully. Once approved by Captain Mitchell, the message was broadcast via a secure satellite network, aimed at the region where the Vorthak had last been seen. Days passed without response, then weeks. Just as hope began to fade, the facility's sensors detected an anomaly, a faint pulse emanating from deep space, identical to the one recorded during the probe's encounter. It lasted only seconds, but its meaning was unmistakable. The Vorthak had received the message. For a brief moment, relief washed over the team. Perhaps the gesture had worked, easing tensions and establishing a tentative truce. But uncertainty lingered. The Vorthak's intentions remained unclear, and their cryptic behavior left humanity walking a tightrope between curiosity and caution. In the end, the mystery of the Vorthak and Ethan Blake remained unsolved. Their presence served as a reminder of humanity's place in the cosmos, small, vulnerable, and perpetually overshadowed by forces beyond comprehension. Yet, amid the fear and uncertainty, there was also awe. The universe was vast and full of wonders, many of which might never be understood. And while the Vorthak's watchful gaze loomed large, it also offered a strange kind of reassurance that somewhere, Amidst the infinite expanse of stars, guardians stood ready to protect the fragile balance of existence. As Dr. Dawson looked out at the night sky, she felt a mix of emotions: fear, wonder, and a glimmer of hope. Humanity had taken its first step into a broader reality, one fraught with challenges, but also possibilities. Whatever lay ahead, one thing was certain: the Vorthak would always be there, watching and waiting, ensuring that some truths remained forever out of reach.